Okay, great. That's excellent. Great. Let's quickly start with adopting the agenda.
Let's just confirm that the stream is going. Okay. You're good to go.
Great. Welcome, everyone. Can we adopt the agenda for today's meeting? Great. Thank you. So Sarah and Sam seconding. There's an aye and a show of hands. Yes. Great. Second item is going to be adoption of the previous meeting's minutes. Do we have a first and second?
Amendments.
Yes.
So within the comments, there had been a comment about oblique angles, and it's just put in as bleak angles. So I thought that should be changed in the comments. And as well, sorry. That I had said encouraged to look at the CSA B652 standards for enhancing the adaptable units. And that the covered walkway should be a minimum of 1.8 meters. That's it.
Great. Anyone else? No. So with those modifications noted, can we approve those previous minutes? Great. So first, I'm assuming it's okay for me to second, so I'll just do that. Do we have a vote on that? Say aye, yes. Sama, are you objecting, or are you on? Okay, you're great. Okay, so we're good. We're unanimous on the adoption. Let's move on to our first items then. I believe planning will introduce the project.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Phil Gibbins with the Community Development Department, and today I'm introducing Development Permit Proposal DP 000604 for 38054 and 38060 2nd Avenue. And this site is located mid-block on the east side of 2nd Avenue, south of the old Dollar Tree store and adjacent laneway, and north of the currently proposed Emoji 2 building. And this site is zoned C4 downtown commercial, and the proposed development is within permit areas DPA 2 for flood hazard, DPA 3 universal form and character guidelines, DPA 5 commercial center form and character guidelines, and DPA 11 for protection from wildfire hazard. This proposal is for a 6-story mixed-use building with 2 levels of commercial space, approximately 590 square meters, and 4 residential levels above. Review of the zoning shows that the requirements of the zoning bylaw are largely met. However, there are variances being sought for building height of 3.2 meters to facilitate a covered rooftop amenity area, and projection into the required setbacks of 0.57 meters to accommodate roof eaves on the northeast and west corners. And today we're seeking feedback from the advisory design panel on the form and character of the proposed development in relation to the development permit area guidelines for development permit areas 3 and 5. And staff review against the guidelines, they're of the opinion that they are largely met, and welcome the panel review and comments on those. And now introducing Emily Rankin from AKA Architecture, who will provide a presentation on the project.
Hi, my name is Emily Rankin, architect AIBC. I am presenting this project located at 38054 38060 2nd Avenue, downtown Squamish, on behalf of the team at AKA Architecture and the landscape architects at Considered Design. Julian Pattison, who you all know from Considered Design, is the landscape architect for this project, but unfortunately is unable to attend today. This building type is fairly typical of downtown Squamish and will be very familiar to the panel. It has 2 stories of commercial and parking with residential above. This project is a 6-story mixed-use infill development located in downtown Squamish. Levels 1 and 2 include parking and commercial space. Levels 3 to 6 include 31 residential units, 4 of which are adaptable. The rooftop of the project is designed as an outdoor amenity space for residents. The project is targeting step 4 of the BC Energy Step Code for residential and step 3 for commercial. The site is located mid-block on the east side of 2nd Avenue in downtown Squamish between Winnipeg and Victoria, behind Cleveland Avenue. Something to note, we'll talk about it more in a little bit, is the service lane behind the site dead ends on the north end. It isn't continuous and it connects out the side to 2nd Avenue. Here we have shown some of the existing context and buildings on this block of 2nd Avenue, including the existing buildings on the site itself. Don't know if you can see my cursor. There it is. This block of 2nd Avenue is experiencing a lot of change. A number of projects of a similar scale are currently under construction or in the works. This also informs our design rationale in response to the evolving nature of 2nd Avenue in downtown Squamish. I wanted to review the site plan before launching into anything further to identify the location of the project and the adjacent lane. So the side lane wraps from 2nd Avenue around to the back lane. This lane functions as an active service lane and still has an opportunity for a 2nd Avenue pedestrian connection. This is an unexpected feature and opportunity of this infill site. The back lane dead ends and isn't continuous through to Winnipeg Street, so it hits the back of the old Dollar Tree. The lane access also acts as fire truck and garbage truck access. We do expect a lot of vehicular movement here, given the developments that are happening further down the lane and the access to parking for those projects. Level 1 includes parking and commercial retail space. The waste storage is located at the northeast corner of the lane. The main entry for residents and for level 2 commercial access is located at the southwest corner, just off of 2nd Avenue. We encourage pedestrian movement down the north side of the building and delineate a change from pedestrian realm to service area with a change in concrete paving color, a change in cladding material and color, all of which are aligned with the edge of the canopy above. We'll be able to see this illustrated a little more in elevation in a few slides. For the landscape at level 1, the streetscape is per District of Squamish streetscape standards. The streetscape elements have been extended down the north side of the building to pull pedestrians down this way. At the corner cut here, the landscape architects have introduced a nice creative element with the paving, playing around with the saw cuts and color of the concrete to animate the corner. The sculptural concrete bench has also been provided. The trees along 2nd Avenue here have been selected per BC Hydro guidelines, although I will point out that the intention is eventually for the power lines to be undergrounded along here. For parking, the project meets District of Squamish parking requirements. There are 35 parking stalls provided on site. For EV charging, there are 11 stalls with chargers, while 100% of the parking stalls have rough-ins for future EV charging electrification. The north ramp accesses parking above at level 2, and the south ramp here accesses the level 1 parking into here. On level 2, you'll see the trip end facility for commercial users. There is access to the office, professional space, parking, and electrical and mechanical rooms. To level 3, the indoor amenity space is located at this level. The landscape planting along grid line 1 includes low maintenance plants with ample planting depth and a modular planting system with a selection of lavender and grasses. The trees along here are magnolia growing to a maximum height of 10 feet. On the residential levels, every residential unit has a private covered deck. The corner decks are expressed at an angle. You'll see this in the perspective images in a few slides also. Every unit has bike storage, and additionally, there is a bike storage room on each residential level. So it's level 6. The outdoor amenity area provided at the rooftop for residents. Elevator access to this level is provided for an accessible path of travel. In plan here, you can see the extents of the roof overhangs at the outside corners. For the landscape architecture design at the roof, more low maintenance planting has been provided with lavender, grasses, and herbs. Urban agriculture planters are provided for residents, tables, chairs, and a barbecue area. The planters are playfully multicolored, and the space is partially covered for weather protection throughout the year. Now, with reference to the changing nature of this block and downtown in general, the intention here has been to define a presence and identity for this building as one whole instead of a kit of parts. We want it to have its own unique character while still being cohesive and relating to the existing and future context. Levels 1 and 2 are connected to 2nd Avenue. Levels 3 to 6 are set back, but still connected through a use of material. The main roof is quite dynamic with the roof line created. The priorities of this project and the design approach have been to create a strong commercial presence at the lower levels while creating a cohesive presence for the whole building mass to have its own differentiated character as a project, as well as maintaining a dialogue with the other new developments on the block. For us, our approach has looked at animating the pedestrian realm. The canopy coverage wraps the northwest corner, providing weather protection, and includes coverage for the Class B bike parking. Immediately, you'll notice the use of color to articulate the building mass, create interest, and define a playful appearance. We wanted to use color as a tool to break down the mass and create a playful and uplifting appearance from the street, especially on gray weather days. The corrugated metal siding is durable and doesn't need to be refinished in this climate. It fits with the industrial past and present of Squamish. You'll also notice the angled decks and articulated roof overhangs provided to define a personality for the building and open it up to the street at those corners in an open rather than enclosed dialogue. The overhangs also provide weather protection and express the materiality of the cedar wood soffits. The wood material choice is a gesture to Squamish forestry. So there is the aesthetic quality, of course, but also very functional at the same time. And with the rooftop amenity up here, the open air weather protection is also provided. Here we have the exterior elevations illustrating the palette proposed. I'll share the material selection samples that I have here in the room. If we can hold them up to the camera, maybe. So you can see. See the view. Okay. We have the slate gray, which is a warm gray for the corrugated metal siding. We have the Adriatic Sea blue, which is the color of the fiber cement panel accent color. This is paired with royal blue metal guards.
Can't see it here, but
I just put it in front of my face. Yeah. This is paired together. The blue, the other secondary color for fiber cement accent color is a very light gray, misty. And we also have navy blue down at the service areas, which I'll point out in a few slides in the elevations. And we also have cedar wood soffit finish as well to pair with these colors. So if I kind of hold them up together, see how they kind of pair as a palette. Hopefully that can see a little bit of that. Okay. Thank you. This first elevation along 2nd Avenue shows the double height main entry and the color palette providing cohesive language on the exterior massing. In this view, we can see the blue decks here accented with perforated blue metal guards. I think this is a really interesting feature of the project and will provide a lot of interest from the street for the front facade. This next elevation shows the side of the building along the lane, showing how the storefront wraps at level 1, and a darker blue finish is used at the back corner to differentiate the service zone. This elevation shows the elevation at the back lane and the entries into the parking. So here, this is the ramp up to level 2, and here's the entry to the level 1 parking. This elevation is immediately adjacent to the neighboring development to the south. So glazing has been reduced on the south face and the corner decks oriented to the east and west. Both of these moves have been with privacy in mind for the neighboring property. This view of the building exterior along 2nd Avenue shows the main entry for the building with the double height volume articulated with blue. The landscape planting at level 3 can be seen from below. The canopy at level 1 is continuous above the commercial storefronts, providing weather protection. The commercial and residential volumes are related through similar exterior cladding materials. You can also see the angled corner decks and the roof overhang articulated here. Here, this view shows the potential for animation at the corner cut at the side lane. The canopy offers lots of weather protection. It's about 10 feet high. The canopy has a wood soffit and general illumination is provided through soffit lighting. There are creative signage opportunities. There is the sculptural concrete landscape bench that offers an opportunity for gathering. We quite like the bench that the landscape architect chose. We feel it's a good fit. It has seating all the way around. There are covered bike racks for visitors. And here you can see the extent of the paving colors extended down the lane. The cladding elements tie the ground floor and building above. This final slide, final image shows animation of the pedestrian realm, the streetscape, and the project's materiality. At AKA, we are very happy with how this project has come together and look forward to the conversation and review. Those are all the slides I have, and I'll turn it back to the panel.
Thank you very much. The way
Should I
we
stop
usually
sharing?
proceed is, is that we'll give each of the panelists an opportunity to ask questions, for any clarifications they need about the design. How about we start with our new member, Suni?
Hi. Oh, here.
So I'm not hearing anything. Is there a problem with the audio or?
Do you hear me?
Yes, now we hear you.
Okay. I don't have any questions.
Great. Sarah?
Always remember to unmute myself. Okay, I've got a couple of questions here. First of all, I just wanted to verify that the seat depth on the concrete bench is approximately a foot. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And is it pavers that are being proposed underneath the bike racks that run along 2nd Avenue?
No, it's not pavers. It's concrete with saw cuts.
Okay, thank you. At the rooftop amenity space, the double doors that lead from the elevator, is one fixed? Are they both going to swing?
At the double doors, both would be operable.
Okay. And then can you just tell me about the color distinction between asphalt versus the paving that's on the cut corner? Is it more or less the same color and just the band of concrete in between to distinguish?
Along 2nd Avenue, sorry?
On the corner of where there's the cut corner of the building where the concrete bench will be, the concrete is darker, and I'm just wondering if it's the same shade as asphalt, and if there's only the distinction of it looks like a concrete band in the renderings between that covered amenity space and the alley.
It will be a darker gray, but it should be different than asphalt. It should look different. Yeah.
Okay, and there is a light concrete band in between the two.
There will be a concrete curb along that laneway, yes.
It's a curb versus it's not all at grade, that area. It's going to be raised up like sidewalk.
It's a flat panel curb, so it will meet flush.
Okay, great, thanks. And I also wondered, was there any exploration of how the max allowable slope of the ramp from the level 2 parking down to the elevator, if it could be that slope could be decreased at all?
So from the parking to get to the level 2 elevator, that area.
Yeah, it's 8.3% ramp, right?
We've definitely worked a lot on that area to make sure that the slopes can get us from the parking to the elevator while making it as accessible as possible.
Is there a slope we should be targeting?
Is there a slope we should be targeting?
Yeah, it should be, maybe 6%. 8.3 is the max, so it's, if you're coming with groceries coming down there or taking something up to your vehicle, it's going to make it a bit more difficult. Okay, that's all my questions at the moment. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Sema.
Thanks for the presentation. I start my question with the accessibility. So you have provided 31 units in this building. Can you clarify how many of them are adaptable or accessible?
4 units are adaptable.
And on what level? Because
there's one on each of the 4 residential levels. It's the northwest unit.
On the corner ones, yes. And can you also clarify that all the elevating devices and the location of the elevator is aligned and complying with the recent with the requirement of the recent EGBC and AIBC elevator guideline?
Is there a specific part of the guideline that you're looking for, or?
It is my understanding that there are some requirements which may have impact on the location as well as the size of the elevator. So I just want to make sure that you are aware of that guideline. It's pretty new.
We'd have to verify to go back.
Okay, thank you. And can you also please show me on the site plan the pedestrian as well as the bicycle access to the site from the bus stop? Where you have a site plan showing the bus stop and the pedestrian access, I think. I was just wondering how is the connection between that pedestrian access and the pedestrian access of the building.
So like if someone arrives by bike and they want to bring the bike into the building?
Yes, correct.
Likely they would come in the main entrance because all of the bike storage is on each residential level and inside the units. So they would bring it in the main entry and up the elevator.
Okay, from where, for example, from the bus stop, they will pass through the street, I'm guessing, and then from the main entrance they will enter and go to their either bike storage or their units, because you also mentioned that units they have also bike storage. Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and the elevator also is complying with the requirement of the carrying bike in it.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. And can you also can you also clarify that all the commercial and the residential parking they have EV potential access, or maybe I misheard that.
So 11 stalls, we've indicated, it's a bit tiny on here, but showing the locations of the EV chargers for 11 of the 35 parking stalls. However, aligned with the District of Squamish requirements, rough-ins for future electrification is provided at 100% of the parking stalls.
That's great. Okay, thank you so much. And also, can you please explain a bit about the garbage and waste management?
See if I can zoom it. I don't know. So yes, the waste storage is located at the northeast corner, adjacent to the lane where we anticipate garbage truck access happens. The curb or the edge of the paving at the lane is a flat panel, so the bins can roll over for access. That's also a reason why we pulled the canopy back at this location, so that there's overhead clearance for the collection vehicles to lift the bins up and into the truck. Accessible clearance has been provided at the door for access to the waste storage area. Hose bib provided and drain for cleaning it. And according to the District of Squamish waste calculations, we've provided garbage recycling compost at this room.
Okay, thank you. And I have one more question about the view study. And so have you done a view study on the downtown Squamish, or you have any? Because I could not open one of the PDFs. Maybe in that PDF, maybe not.
We showed like the last 3 slides of the presentation, just showing the 3D of the building. But as far as our understanding, the District of Squamish has not required us to provide the view studies for this site.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sama. Who's next here?
Beth, maybe?
Beth? Yes? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I do have a few questions. Thanks for the presentation. Appreciate the way that you spoke about the context, the consideration that you've given, the local materiality. I have a few questions in that respect, actually, that maybe I'll start with. I'm curious about the consideration for the Adriatic blue. It's definitely a striking color. I'm curious if there were any conversations about the timelessness of that particular color choice, the connection to context, to regional materiality, to the vernacular, how it maybe would sit in the existing context and the future context. And I know that you did mention that there had been some consideration given to projects that were planned to sit on adjacent sites as well. And I think I'm just a little bit curious to hear a little bit more about how you guys arrived at the color and are feeling about the appropriateness given the context.
Yeah, so I feel like even the name Adriatic blue maybe kind of sounds foreign, but as like the color itself, I think we've talked a lot in the office about Squamish being an oceanfront community. And so, the idea of blue being a gesture to the water, to the ocean, and using that or trying to incorporate it as a playful element for the project. So.
Okay. And another question that I have would be about I like the softening of the corner. I think it's in the northwest corner, softening. I'm curious about the intention behind softening the corner to bring people into the lane. And knowing that the lane doesn't sort of have like a flow through. Could you speak a little bit about the intention to bring people in to a certain point and sort of where that sort of flow is meant to go once it hits that change in materiality of the building halfway through the lane?
Yes. So I guess this is an interesting part of the project because it's like we want to bring people down the side of the building, but like to a certain point, because as you point out, like after that, there's no through connection to Cleveland Avenue there, and you can walk down the side of the building and all of a sudden you're in a lane. But the idea of, because this space is an opportunity with the animation of the commercial tenant in that area, to find ways to use the space provided, but then through the paving color, the cladding color, the extent of the canopy, to then kind of change the language to stop drawing people even further down the lane.
So the idea is maybe to kind of gesture people towards the commercial element, but there's no access point back into the building further down unless you walk all the way around to the parkade. Is that correct? Like there's no other.
There is access to parking and to the stair, which theoretically as a resident. So residents can come down the stair here and come
I can't
out.
I can't see your screen. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'll share and then I'll show in plan as well.
Okay, yeah, that'd be appreciated.
Okay.
Sorry, I might just jump in. Also, the district has a policy for mid-block connections. While I don't think there's an existing one down there, there's potential for future connections through to Cleveland.
Okay. Yes, so good point. So, designing for future opportunities. Hope I'm sharing now. So here, the extent of the darker paving. And so this stair here comes up and out of the parking at level 1. And this stair here comes down from residential levels and out here. So access to the building is provided at both of these areas further down this side of the building.
Okay, thank you. I think other than that, if I know we're mindful of the time, if we just have a minute to look at the southern elevation really quickly in context.
Yes, just one moment.
Just to revisit it.
This
Okay.
one here?
Yeah. Okay, understood. And it's in terms of its existing context, is it adjacent to like a prescribed future development, or are the buildings remaining next door?
Currently, there is site work being done for future development, but I don't know if someone from the district has more information on timeline or anything about what's going on that site. Oh, but like scale of the building will be a 6-story building.
That's all the
I don't have
questions.
an exact update on. It has a development permit, but I'm not sure where their construction stage is at. But yeah, it's a similar form to what's proposed adjacent.
Okay. Okay, that's all the questions that I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I have a couple of questions where I would like you to elaborate on some specific design decisions. The first one is about that lane elevation and whether there's some specific reason why that level of parking is not being daylit.
Like level 1 and 2 from the back and side lanes.
Right, yes.
I think it wasn't something that we'd considered at this point in time. I think we were looking at how to kind of tie together the material, and we're looking at sort of trying to provide a cohesiveness rather than providing more openings at certain areas. Yeah.
Okay. So along the same lines, a similar concern from a design point of view is that level, that second level of commercial on the street. There seems to be very little glazing, which seems unusual. A normal expectation would be for continuous or strip glazing or a large amount of glazing and a limited amount of wall for that type of space. So I'm wondering again, what was the rationale on that decision?
The glazing at level 2 specifically for the commercial area was to meet the requirements of the energy model for this project. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. I'm very tight little site. Obviously very challenging in terms of achieving access and laying out that parking. The 5% cross slope seems very liminal. I mean, normally anything above 4 for cross slope on parking is kind of objectionable. So a little bit of a concern there. But I'm also looking at the way the slope seems to have been drawn and just concerned whether or not, in fact, you will be able to meet the slope requirements, the accessibility requirements in further design development as you move into construction documentation. And I guess my question is, what's your level of confidence there, and does the project kind of start to fall apart when that stops to work?
So the shown in the sections in the package includes the ramp slope study. So we were up against the water table, and so we couldn't go down very much. And so really the exercise was being able to get the ramp up and over to meet the level 2 elevation while meeting our 5% for parking area. So it's definitely tight, but I think we're confident that given the exercise and the study performed, that we can meet those elevations. But it definitely was a...
I can answer this.
Yeah, go for Jane.
I
I'm Jane Song. I'm also from AKA, an architect there. We actually have done a number of parkades in Squamish, and every time we do it, it's a very, very tight squeeze. So I will tell you, yes, we are at the lowest we can go for the water table. We're as high as we can go and meet the slope requirements for the parkade ramp. And so we know we've investigated it quite thoroughly because we know we have to be bang on the money every time. So it actually forms, I mean, we can't even really get started on the design until we have that figured out. The other thing to mention is the requirement for a minimum headroom clearance is beyond the code minimum. It's I think it's 2.3 meters or something like that. So we've actually, you know, it doesn't sound like much more than the code minimum, but we really did a lot of math to make sure we're getting that everywhere in the parkade. So I think we've spent more time doing the math on that than the rest of the building.
Mhm.
But you're right. We'll always keep our fingers crossed. Thank you.
Right. I'm also noticing the floor-to-floor height for that level 2 commercial is only 10'3", the same as the residential above. Again, that seems, you know, very tight for commercial space. And I'm just kind of wondering, you know, would it not be acceptable for the project to exceed ever so slightly the 20-meter, you know, height, you know, in order to have that gain on that level 2 of pushing that from 10'3" to 12 foot. I mean, normally you'd be looking at, you know, at 13 for commercial floor to floor, but, you know.
You raise a very good point. I'm going to answer for Emily because we have a number of projects where we've given priority to the CRUs at the ground floor level because generally speaking, the second floor tends to be used as office space. But we do find it quite tight under construction to fit everything we need to up there. So, you know, originally we were trying to meet the building height, maximum building height. And in that case, we're trying to split the difference between L1 ceiling space and L2. So we could drop the ceiling height in level 1, and that would actually help us in many ways. For example, Sarah makes that ramp easier to lower the slope. So it is something that we're still kind of reviewing, but we definitely see the value in that. If we wanted to increase both floor levels to be 11 foot or whatever, then we would need more of a variance. Currently, right now, our variance, our roof height variance is only related to the roof over the amenity space at the rooftop level. So I'd have to speak to the planners to see how that, what the flexibilities are in that particular variance. Because I think it is known that those second floor spaces can be quite challenging.
Mhm.
Mhm.
All right, thank you. That's all for my questions. So we'll now invite the panelists in the same order that they spoke previously to actually give their comments. So that would be.
May I, sorry, Charles, I just had a comment that there actually is a space between the Takasushi building and Marcello's. So there is a pedestrian walkthrough. I mean, it's not the loveliest, but there is something that exists there that could probably be improved in the future. So just as an FYI to everyone.
Great, thank you. So Suni, you didn't have any questions, but you're welcome to comment on the project.
Well, what I have to say is that this project seems to be really aligned with the new projects that are going to be built in Second Avenue. I liked the fact that the corner cut that is promoting the social aspect of the movement, pedestrians and people that are going to be around. I like that. I like the scale of the building, the placement. I think you have described pretty well what the project is about, and yeah, so that's what I have to say.
Great, thank you. Sarah, I think you were next, right?
I think so. Overall, I think that the project is great. I like the look of the building. I'm very pleased with the adaptable units that you've actually looked at the functional statement and it functions, because often adaptable units can be built and they're not actually going to be adaptable. I'd just like you to encourage you, even though it's very tight and probably not possible, is to try and increase the interior corridor from 1.5 meters to 1.8 if possible. Only because if people are bringing bikes in and people are passing in the hallway, it's going to be a little tight. On the rooftop amenity space, just to remind you, no fixed seating so that anybody can pull up a chair if they need to. In the renderings, and it's probably just because the tree was short and the pedestrian person was tall, but just to ensure that there's no protruding hazards from the trees for somebody with a visual impairment. That there's automatic door openers sort of at the main entrances and from the parkades into the vestibule where the elevator is. If you can decrease the 8.3% slope, I would encourage you to do that. And then this is more of a comment maybe for the district, but is just to ensure that with the bicycle racks are going to be along 2nd Avenue, as well as any signposts, that there is some, there's not going to be hazards for people getting out of their vehicles to cross over through that space. So, I know that with my large van, my lift comes out the side, but, if I line it up properly, then I can typically get out in most spots, but just to be cognizant of that. And yeah, just to ensure that on that corner space where you're inviting people down the alley, that there is that distinction between spaces. So there's not going to be someone inadvertently kind of wandering into the middle. And yeah, I think that's it. But overall, yeah, I think it's great. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Sema?
Thank you so much for the presentation. Generally, I like the concept of the form and character of the building, and in addition to other panels comments, there are few minor consideration. So I just add this consideration. Please consider the ownership rights as well as the air parcel agreements and security, differentiating the publicly versus privately owned spaces. Review the recent EGBC AIBC elevator guideline for potential impacts on the size and the location of the elevator. I suggest to consider Rick Hansen accessibility recommendation for the signage and site accessibilities for both residential and commercial units, and consider more warm and live color scheme for residential units. Consider a clear path of travel for commercial bike access. Consider the requirement of step code level 5 for the residential part. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Sema. Beth?
Hi there. Yeah, generally, I really did appreciate the thoughtfulness in which you spoke of the materiality, the connection to the industrial history, to the logging history for materiality. I think is really important. I think that I would encourage you to take another look at the gesture of bringing people into the alleyway at the corner. I like the softening of the corner, like the other panelists as well, because I think it creates a nice social space at the corner as well. I would just think maybe more, there's a duty of care once you bring people sort of midway down that lane, that we can't just lose the sidewalk and sort of force people out into the lane and maybe create some potential confusion. So maybe I might consider looking at that one a little bit more. I spent my morning actually in that practice note about the elevator, Sama. So it's funny that you bring it up. So I'd second taking a look at it because it's relatively new, but I didn't see anything strange that would cause me any concern. And I think just to the point, I don't have any concerns about the encroachment on the variances. So the encroachment of the setback for the soffit and the increase in height for the rooftop amenity, because I think that the rooftop amenity is a nice amenity. I think if it were to be increased or were to be considered to be increased for the commercial spaces at all, I might take a second look at the roof, the expressivity of the roof line, because maybe if it starts to creep into higher territory, we might want to think about whether or not the roof line might want to get a little less expressive and a little quieter. That would just be my one concern there.
To you for that last comment.
Sorry, Beth. We missed your last sentence. You cut out.
Oh, apologies. Can you hear me now? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, I think I just mentioned that if consideration were to be given to increasing the encroachment into the height, the maximum height, I might suggest that one would take a closer look at the roof line. The roof line's expressive, which is a nice feature, maybe at lower level, but if the building were to get a little higher, it might be something that one might want to look at in terms of the way that it might obstruct views.
Great, thank you. All right. I'm going to start my comments with saying that yes, generally speaking, I like this building, and I'm quite impressed with, assuming that it works out, quite impressed with how neatly things have been arranged of solving that problem with the parking. Very obviously very challenging, and generally well done. I do have an issue with the two-story blank wall on the lane, I would suggest that daylighting that parking would be a good thing from a simply from a practical point of view, and would also provide an opportunity to resolve that elevation, in a more satisfying way aesthetically. I know it's the lane, it's the back of the building, but I think that that could be improved significantly. I'm also skeptical about the limited amount of glazing on the second level street facing for the commercial. I think it seems, I understand, dealing with the amount of glazing in terms of the energy performance, but there are, a number of trade-offs and compromises that, that can be used to meet those requirements. And similar to the problem with the lanes, I think if you allow yourself more glazing, we could have a more satisfying composition for that slice of the building, which I find is oddly articulated, and yeah, I would encourage some further design development on that slice of the elevation. I'm noting that the roof, the free floating roof above the balconies is very thin, which looks great. And it structurally it that looks very challenging to me. So I'm wondering how that ends up in reality, as that is, structurally, figured out. It looks very different if it starts to thicken up, right? Um, I'm going to limit my comments to that. Thank you. Those are, I think, are my important points. Now, typically at this point, the panel, may have a discussion about how we feel about the the project, and whether, what we want our recommendation to be. And do I have anyone on the panel who wants to, put forth a motion or start a discussion? Sarah?
I would promote or advise to choose B, where the applicant works with the planner on the comments that we provide.
Great. We have a first and second. I'm willing to let this go to a vote.
In favor?
All in favor? That's 4. And sorry, I don't have a camera on SUNY.
In favor.
In favor? Great. So that's unanimous. Our resolution is going to be to work with staff with no need to return to the panel. Now, we have notes on the comments on that, which are intended to be part of the resolution. Does staff need us to reiterate those points, or do we have good notes?
I think we're okay with the comments provided, and the meeting is also recorded.
Great, that's excellent. Thank you very much. So thank you very much for the applicant. Nice little project, and that concludes that item on our agenda.
Thank you both. Happy holidays.
Great, thank you. Now, we may have a little bit of an issue here. We have a limited amount of time to review this following project before we lose quorum. So I have a decision here as to, is everyone comfortable with us trying to get to a vote within a half an hour?
Luke Tyson arriving on the panel.
Ah, great. That resolves the problem then. So we will proceed.
Do you
So,
want to
I
recess the
believe staff-
meeting?
Hmm?
Do you want to recess the meeting for 5 minutes while they switch over?
Yes, if we need to, certainly. Thank you. So let's have a 5-minute recess. We'll see you all back here in 5 minutes. Nice collection of watering cans you have there, Peter.
Yeah, Home Depot special. I walked in there one day and they had every color imaginable, so I said I want one of each. Thank you. Yeah.
Charles, we're ready to go whenever you are.
Great. I think everyone is back. So let's resume.
Thanks, Charles. I can introduce our second item here. So my name is
Great.
Jessie Abraham, planner. Today I'm introducing a development permit application for 3rd Avenue in downtown Squamish. So this application has not been previously presented to the panel, and the site is located at 38029, 035, and 045 on 3rd Ave, mid-block between Victoria and Winnipeg Streets. The development includes a consolidation of 3 single-family lots with rear lane access and includes 1 mixed-use building with ground floor commercial, 2nd-story parkade, and 4 stories of residential above. And the residential includes 45 units. So the project has undergone a comprehensive development rezoning process known as CD 105 zone, which has set the general parameters for the development, including siting, size, density, and massing. All the zoning requirements have been met. No variances are proposed. Staff are generally supportive of the design. However, our review concluded that several guidelines in relation to DP Area 3 for universal guidelines and DP Area 5 for commercial center are not fully met, and would appreciate the ADP's comments and recommendations on the following aspects. So DP A guidelines speak to human scale development, connection to the street, unique detailing at commercial storefronts, and highlights vibrancy of the streetscape while achieving a pleasing overall color balance. So staff are seeking ADP's review of commercial signage and visual interest at street level. DP Area 3 includes guidelines around universal accessibility throughout the development. Staff are seeking ADP's review of development accessibility, including pedestrian routes and accessible seating in common amenity areas. And DP Area 3 also speaks to preventing large blank walls for infill development. Staff are seeking ADP comment on blank wall at south elevation. And with that, I will pass it to the applicant to present the proposal.
Taizo Yamamoto with Yamamoto Architecture. Share my screen.
Taizo, can you speak up? It's hard to hear you.
Sorry about that. Is that better?
Can you turn it up more?
How is that? I can try speaking up a bit louder, or let me see if I can adjust my settings a bit.
Try to adjust your settings.
Okay. Let me just stop sharing for one moment. Apologies for this. Oh, is that any better?
I think that's better, yeah. Just speak up loudly, please. Thanks.
Okay, will do. Sorry about that. Okay, thank you very much. Apologies I couldn't be there today. I'm just recovering from COVID and didn't want to get you all sick before the holidays. This is the sort of a companion project to a project that you saw a couple of months ago that we presented across the street. And so we kind of have a unique opportunity to do a paired building relationship, which is very rare. The site is located downtown, a very good location for mixed use and in compliance with the OCP designations. So there's kind of a mixed development on site at the moment with the adjacent Lauren building, or sorry, building over the Lauren, the Asheville across the street, and then single family homes. So it's kind of a transitional area at the moment. One of the ideas that we had in developing the building massing was to kind of refer to the chief and the texture and the topography of the chief, but also the valley, the Squamish Valley, and the fact that we do have mirrored buildings that can kind of speak to each other. So there was a notion of bringing in kind of an organic street wall and a condition that is very unique because we have ability to control both sides of the street. So that was kind of one of the things that was really interesting to us. Also because the building transitions from the Lauren building, which is on the south, and the Women's Center building immediately to the south, and then to what will be a further setback street wall further to the north as that gets developed. So There's kind of a way to mediate the street wall through the west building, but then also reflect that to what's happening on the east side. So along Third, you have small storefronts that are broken up into narrow kind of fine grain retail, a cut through along the northern edge of the site, and the residential lobby sort of tucked in the middle, parking access at grade and up to the level 2 off of the lane. So this sort of shows the massing steps that kind of evolved the development in terms of notching on corners to maximize light and reduce massing towards the adjacent sites. But then also this idea of a topography and a stepping back of building planes to create more interest along the street wall. And then finally, you know, upper story additional step backs to create more breathing room to the neighbor and more solar access. Material palette is fairly limited because it is a fairly small building and we want to create a singular expression for the building. So that includes cementitious panels on upper levels that are sort of a mossy green color, some accent cementitious panel, which is a darker gray that would relate to the dark gray window colors and unify that palette. Longboard wood soffit for the undersides of soffits to also create some warmth. And then some sealed concrete at grade that kind of is the termination of those pier elements at grade. And dabbing is in the chambers with the material board. This is just some images of projects we've done with cementitious panel and showing how we can detail it in a way that's very clean. Part of the way we like to do this is to have color matched bent metal trim as opposed to easy trim, which can often be quite, it stands out quite a bit and adds a lot of depth, and we prefer to make those joints and those seams disappear. We've also looked at introducing screening elements. I think you saw a similar idea on the east building to screen the parkade level, but introduce murals as well that provide additional color and also can refer additionally to Squamish, whether it's the history of the site or just additional storytelling. So this is the rendering of the east elevation. So you can see the piers connect the lower level to the upper, but then there's some step backs that happen both in plan and in section to open up the corner at the north side and create a bit more interest along the street wall. And even though there's a flat roof, there's a kind of a varied roofscape as a result of the plan steps. And then some murals that can also refer to the topography and the rock faces of the chief in a more monochromatic way to balance the color of the building. So this is another view and showing how the cut through can be activated by glazing that extends partially down that cut through on the north side. And then this shows a view of both buildings. Some color has been added to the east building since you've last seen it, and some additional murals and activation at the street level. You can just run. So the plan again, parking off the lane, access to the lobby through where the kind of bike lane is offset and kind of creates a special moment for the residential lobby. Parking on level 2, level 3, which provides indoor and outdoor amenity space on the level deck, level 2 deck, level 3 deck, sorry. And then step back corners on the upper levels of the building. And then rooftop amenity space in the form of outdoor space because we're at a 6-story building already and we cannot increase indoor space on that 7th floor without going to a non-combustible construction. Some additional glazing added on the corner, northeast corner of the building to bring activation of that retail onto that cut through. And then wrapping that mural along level 2 on all sides, including the south side towards the women's center building. We are trying to get 12-foot clear in the retail wherever possible with some reduced height below the ramp on the southern side. And then signage, of course, is a placeholder at this stage until the tenants come in and provide additional variation in color and sign fonts through their own branding and their own uses. But a fairly simple expression offset with signage around the entries of the individual units, but then also kind of connected to those piers that form the building on the upper levels. And with that, I'll pass it over to Peter.
Okay, thank you, Taizo. Yeah, the ground floor, as you explained it, is fairly straightforward with the streetscape on 3rd Avenue with the bike lane, which takes a bit of a chicane because of the Women's Center and lining things up. But we do have some street trees there with structural soil and silvacells. You can see there's some bike racks there just parallel to the bike lane with lots of room for movement there off of 3rd Avenue and into the building and commercial itself. The next slide, please, Taizo. Up on the next level, which is level 3, which is over top of the parking. On the south side of the building, there is the amenity space that covers both the east and the west side. And then along the frontage on 3rd, we've got some raised planters with some small and medium-sized trees with the same on the lane side, so that it's got this a nice little green shoulder, which is similar to what we're doing across the street. So it greens the project up a little bit. And all these trees, of course, fit with the fire spread concerns and low fire rating on the plants, etc. So moving along, up on the tippy top of the building, we have a common shared open space there with some built-in timber wood seating, essentially some platforms and some seats, all about 18 inches in height, easily accessible. And then there's some extensive green roof that covers up a goodly portion of the roof to green the space up and to deal with some sustainability issues. So it brings for some nice habitat there as well. I think in general, the next bunch here are planting plans. So I don't think we really need to go through those. These give you the site sections, so it gives you some relationships there on the ground floor from 3rd Avenue to the lane. And then, the detail of 3rd Avenue, the raised planters up on level 3, and then the roof deck with the seating, green roof, and the layout up there. So that's pretty well the landscape presentation. Thank you.
So that concludes our presentation, and we're happy to hear your comments and feedback. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. That was indeed very efficient. Let's proceed as we did previously, and panelists are each invited to ask questions for clarifications. And we'll start in the same order as we did previously. Suni, I'll give you a chance to ask the first set of questions.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a question about the pedestrian route in the back lane. Like, there's gonna be a lot of exit entrances like in the back where the commercial spaces are, and then the back of the building for the main lobby. So the lane for me, I think is gonna be a lot of pedestrian movement. Maybe a lot of people walking around. So how is the safety too about that?
So one advantage of having the mid-block cut through along the north side is that it does provide a pedestrian route from the lane to the front of the site. So that's one route. Another would be a connection into the lobby from the rear of the site for residents. I believe most of the access to the rear of the retail would be more for service rather than public, and visitors to the retail would use that cut through walkway to get to the front of the building. Does that answer your question, or?
Yeah.
Great. Any more questions, Suni? Great. Sarah.
Presentation. To begin with, can you tell me which units are meant to be adaptable?
So At the moment, we're considering the northwest corner unit stack and an additional unit on level 3 on the northeast corner because we want to make sure that unit plan is stacking well up the building. But we're providing 5 adaptable units.
Okay. And what is the distance from the, let me get the right slide here, from the bike racks to the front of the CRU units on ground level?
Those are, that's around 7-8 feet.
Okay. And is it's assumed then that none of these retail spaces will have anything else spilling out onto the sidewalk?
Well, there's more space available for the southernmost retail unit where the bike lane is swinging further east. And there would be some room for some small table and chairs immediately outside of the windows.
Yeah, it might be getting tight. Okay. And just to verify that the height over the accessible parking space at the back is 5.84 meters.
The accessible parking will be providing a 2.3 meter requirement.
No, the height of the, because it's partially covered, is it not?
Yes, but we have our full 12-foot clear ceiling for the ground level over those areas. So
right, so that's the 5.8 meters.
It's not 5.8 meter, but I don't believe we require 5.8 for the accessible stalls.
No, I was looking at I was trying to get the height. It's fine. Can you tell me what's, and maybe this is a district question, what's the width of the bike lane?
Yeah, I don't have that number handy. I don't know if Jessie can field that one.
Second.
I've got another question. So can you explain to me how the garbage room is going to be emptied?
So the bins will be pulled out to the lane for pickup via the access route that's provided between the 2 accessible stalls.
Okay. And how are they going to pass the most westerly door if they open outward?
The door, we can consider looking at a roll-up gate for that garbage room. I think that might be a more effective solution. But the intent is that that door would swing 180 to be fully opened.
So if it was a roll-up door, which would potentially have less conflict with people coming in and out of the door, how would people enter that? Like how would that door get opened for them to go and take their garbage?
We would. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think we could find space for a door on the west side, a person door, and then have the roll-up gate. I think there's a bit of tuning that can be done around that area to improve the function.
Okay. And I guess this is a question for Jessie as well. Is there a bike lane on both sides of 3rd Avenue?
Yeah, so to answer your first question, it's 1.5 meters wide. And yes, there's a bike lane on both sides of 3rd Avenue. Yes.
So it's presumably it's a one-way, the bike lane, is that?
That would be, yeah, the assumption for the bike lane. Yeah.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you. Oh, sorry, no, one more question. The planting that's going between the street trees, where it just adjacent to where the mid-block crossing is it meant to be grass planted between those trees?
Yeah, there is no planting intended there. That's just a hatch pattern showing the structural soil underneath.
Beneath. Okay,
Beneath,
gotcha.
yeah. Because the idea is that it'd be paved so you can step out of your car. Yep.
Super. Thank you.
Sama.
Thanks for the presentation. My question was very similar to Sora's question. First, can you please show on the floor plan how the waste management concept is and how the access to the garbage truck will be from the garbage room?
The goal would be that the truck would pull over on the lane, and then the bins would be pulled out to the lane for pickup, because we don't have the headroom to have a full lift over vertically of the garbage bins within the site. This is similar to what is being done for the Amaji, for example, and we're having the waste management company review this and confirm that there's no issues with it. But to my responses to Sarah, I believe there's some refinements that can be done to make sure that access out of that room is easier, both for the bins and also for person access, and to minimize conflict with people moving in and out of the building.
Okay, and so the access to the garbage truck will be from the elevator, or?
Yes, so residents would come down to the lobby on level 1 and use that corridor that leads to the west, to the lane, and there would be a person door that would allow them to get into the garbage room, secured door.
Okay, same elevator that they use for example, to access to parking level, yes?
That's correct.
Okay. And can you also please elaborate more on EV charging and how many are provided?
So at the moment, the project will be 100% rough-in for district requirements. And another thing that the project is doing is committing to 100% electrified, so no natural gas for the building.
Thank you. And can you also explain, it is my understanding that you provided 5 adaptable units, yes?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. And how many accessible parking are provided? In addition to commercial, access, required accessible parking spaces for commercial.
Yeah, so 3 accessible total are provided. So 1 would be allocated for commercial, and so 2 would be provided for residents.
For those 5?
Yeah, so adaptability, I think, for us doesn't necessarily mean that is somebody in a wheelchair, but it's an enhancement of whether
Yes.
it's.
So sorry, let me ask this question. So how many accessible residential units are provided? Because we also have a code requirement for the accessible units.
Yeah, at the moment we haven't selected the accessible unit, but we are going to be providing the code and district requirements.
Okay. Can you also talk about the roof drainage and what was the concept for the sustainable drainage considerations?
Yeah, the roof will drain fairly conventionally, and Peter can jump in here, but the sedum will also delay rainwater infiltration through the building because of the soil medium that will support some of that initial rainfall. But Peter, do you have any?
I think, Taizo, you summarized it well there. The idea is that there would be some potential for the green roof growing medium to retain moisture and allow that to be used by the plant material. And then any additional stuff would flow away.
Thank you. I'm finished. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Beth has left, so it'll be Luke.
I think the mural of the artwork that's shown at level 2, is it a placeholder or is that actually the final artwork that's proposed?
Yeah, so it is a placeholder at the moment, but the intent is to have a more monochromatic mural along the east side to also kind of keep a more restrained palette towards the street, with the building being quite a significant color overall, but then more bright elements of color along the cut through and the lane to provide more animation there.
Okay, has a process been sort of identified as to how to select an artist, or?
Our client is still working through that, and whether it's, I think the goal though would be to contract an artist directly rather than go through an invitation bid type process.
Okay, thanks. Would you be able to pull up your level 1 plan for me, please? Sorry, I didn't bring the drawings with me and I'm in person. My first question for the level 1 would be could you let me know like what the width is in the lobby corridor, please?
Sure. So the width of this area right here is 5'6".
And with the clearance in front of the elevator to that wall where the stair is?
Yeah, so there
The
we
same.
would have 6 feet.
Okay. Oh yeah, I can see that. Thanks. And then on the storefronts, I see you push the doors back. What's the sort of strategy for the signage and lighting in these areas?
So the idea is that there would be signage mounted to the wall above the door, and then signage that's lit from the canopy above. But obviously the signage would be customized per the tenant, so that there would be another layer of kind of diversity and variation along the facade. But we like the idea of having the signage offset and centered over the door, just because there's sort of an asymmetric organizing principle with the piers as they go up the building, and it just kind of sort of ties the signage and the entry to those piers.
Okay, and sorry, it's hard to see from the elevation, but is there the soffit under there? Is there intended to be a certain type of lighting in there, or is it wall sconce, or?
There would be directional signage mounted to the underside of the canopy. Here, let me show you.
Yeah, that's better. Okay, so is it like a pot light, or is it like a strip in the soffit?
Yeah, it would be a pot light within the soffit.
Okay. Is there any intention to carry the lighting around the mid-block cut through?
Yes, there would be lighting within the overhanging parts of level 2, just to maintain lighting through that pedestrian connection.
Thank you. And is there any strategy for wayfinding for the mid-block cut through?
At the moment, we haven't really developed that, but we would look to speaking with transportation and planning to determine what would be needed. This cut through wasn't originally part of the OCP, so we would need to just clarify what directions we wanted to clear, what illuminated, especially at the end where it meets the lane.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Teza. That's all my questions.
Great, thank you. I don't have a lot of questions on this one. We've essentially kind of reviewed this building before because of its sibling across the street, and I do think that that's interesting that we have a project where essentially kind of 2 phases but on opposite sides of the street, and they kind of speak to each other, and that really is actually very nice because it's so very rare. And so as per the last project, and there's I think there's a little bit more detailing has been provided as to the nature of those screens for the open side of the parkade on the lane. You know, I guess that box of the parking, you know, being a solid wall on the street side, in this case, it's architecturally, it's very well resolved and understandable. On the lane side, since you do have those screens in place, I was wondering if there was any particular reason why we are not daylighting or providing actual kind of, you know, glazing or simply open panels on that lane side.
Yeah, the lane, it's a bit of a balancing act between finding enough open air to allow the parkade to ventilate passively, but also preventing light pollution and spill onto the neighboring properties. So we've tried to, I can go to the screening plan, to keep some openness, but make sure that we're not creating glare to the neighboring properties. So we could look at tuning that a little bit more, potentially overlapping less. But the idea is that that upstand wall would provide the guard for those parking within the L2. And then the color and interest would be provided by the mural rather than the screening element. And the screening element would be more of a shadow and functional piece that allows that level to still ventilate.
All right, and for the mural artwork, do we have any idea what the substrate and medium on that are at this point?
Our assumption is that the mural would be painted directly onto the concrete walls.
All right, thank you. So in the same order, we're welcoming comments from the panel now. Suni.
I think this is a nice project. I just have the comment about the south elevation wall that could be a little bit less blank. I know that the top part is the mural, and then the bottom, I think it's just the concrete. But it could be nice to break that a little bit. That's my comment.
Great, thank you. Sarah.
So first of all, I want to encourage you that when you are confirming which units will be adaptable, that you ensure that there's going to be the space requirements that the functional statements of BC Building Code imply that there's enough space. Because currently with a 6x9 bathroom with, you know, virtually no space between the toilet and the shower bathtub, it's not going to be usable in the future to be adapted. The hallway should be a minimum of 1.8 meters. Right now at 5'6", it's 1676, 1.67. So you need to increase that size slightly. This is probably more district related, but I would encourage adding an accessible parking stall in the parallel parking in front of the building that's closest to the mid-block crossing, and then doing a blended curb with directional lines that would lead across the mid-block so that you can utilize that for a rear entry vehicle or a longer vehicle to park. And then that would, you know, potentially provide some additional parking if needed. And then again, this is probably more district related, but CNIB doesn't recommend having bike lanes that are elevated using sidewalk. I just see that there's some potential conflict with people parking and opening their doors and cyclists coming along and running into those doors. So that might want to be looked at. And yeah, otherwise, yeah, I'm fine with the rest of the building. That's my comments. Thank you. Oh, no, sorry. Excuse me. There needs to be some resolving of the garbage room and the access at that rear entry point. I think that, you know, depending on what time the garbage truck is coming, and if it's presumably going to park as close to the access aisle between those two accessible parking spots, then those two spots are potentially going to be unable to move their vehicle while the garbage is being dumped. And if that's first thing in the morning when somebody's got to get to work, that might be a problem. So there needs to be just a little bit of consideration of that garbage movement and truck parking, etc. Additionally, you should have some automatic door openers on the front entrance and the rear entrance, as well as if the entrance into the garbage room is going to be more than 22 newtons, or about 5 pounds of pressure, then that too should have an automatic door opener on it. That's all my comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Samuel.
Thanks for the presentation. I like how you incorporated Squamish elements into the design concept, form and character, the chief, the neighborhood. Great job. I encourage you to look at the CSA standard and Rick Hansen certification requirements for the site as well as the building accessible units. I also appreciate to clarify on the sustainable drainage consideration. Please consider efficient and practical garbage and waste management as the other panelists mentioned. Consider the recent EGBC and AIBC elevator guideline. And also I suggest to consider the code requirements for the number of required accessible and adaptable units and parking spaces, specifically for residential piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. Luke.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Taizo and Peter, for the presentation. Yeah, I enjoy how straightforward the design is, like aesthetically. It's quite nice to see that it's kind of creating a sense of continuity, I suppose, with the opportunity of having the building across the street as a reflective project. Is one of the concerns of mine that we've got so many different developments going down one street here, and it's not one of them is reacting off another. And I'm hoping this will be a little bit of a sense of calm. So yeah, it's nice to see, and it's also nice to I think the focus would be to consider, you know, as that building develops, how this one will look and react against it, whether there's like a slight differentiation between the two with color tones, which I think from the image you showed us, it already had. I also appreciate the speaking to the fiber cement detailing, because it's imperative that on a building such as this, that is detailed in that way. If there's use of easy trim and abundant flashings, it's really going to be it's going to affect the actual look of that building. So that's great to hear. Yeah, I will echo Sarah's comment with the waste storage room. I actually don't think it's acceptable. I think it's acceptable to use an accessible spaces maneuverable area to walk through, but I don't think it's acceptable to pull out waste garbage totes through that space. You're basically asking two people to park next to that in that space, knowing that the car eventually will get dinged up, and we can't really put any bollards there because that will be against the whole accessibility factor. So I think there needs to be a little bit of massaging done in that area to gain more space if the garbage room needs to be in that area. But if it can be in some way moved towards the laneway, it'd be a lot better. And yeah, to also echo the lobby, I appreciate that, you know, lobby isn't an area where the developer can gain money back. However, it does need to meet a minimum standard. And I think if at minimum that area in front of the elevator is bumped out to, you know, even 8 feet, it just allows when a couple of people are waiting there, if someone comes in with a wheelchair, it allows that maneuverability factor and it'll feel like a lot better of a space. And okay, yeah, the mid block cut through as well. I think it's imperative that that be lit in some way, shape, or form. Perhaps as a bit further consideration by landscape for any potential activation opportunities, whether it, you know, be seating or more mural. I think it did look like there was some secured down there, but it's kind of difficult to see without having a good 3-dimensional sense of the space down there. Yeah, I think speaking to the mural as well, it's I think it should be carefully considered. It's difficult. I don't think that the public art seat is here today. It's not here, is it? No. But yeah, I think it should be carefully considered to sort of fit with the development, you know, whether it's flashy colors or it's grayscale. I mean, it could be anywhere in between. I wouldn't want to specify. But I think it should be carefully considered in some way. And I do actually enjoy how on the rear it's broken up a bit by the concrete structure. It kind of allows, you know, maybe a potential for different types of image. But potentially there could be some use of perforated metal at the back to screen those openings. And then maybe perhaps that would allow a substrate to be painted upon so you wouldn't actually see it, and that would allow the continuous rhythm of your squares. I think that would be quite nice to see. But yeah, those would be all my comments, I believe. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, I wish I had more of the panel, present to kind of witness on this project. It really is very good in a lot of subtle ways. I think, principally from a form and massing point of view, the way it mirrors its counterpart on the other side of the street is interesting. But more importantly is there's a, sort of 3 levels of scale that it is properly respecting, where the building is working on a level of identifying individual residential units. It's breaking the mass down into chunks that represent the rhythm of the streetscape, and the relationships of the forms are a nice cascading kind of repeating pattern to them. So it's overall it's a very elegant and very careful composition. It's really nicely done, and I know how difficult that can be, and this is really well executed here. I think this is a good example of what a good background building in an urban environment should be. And I'm saying that because I want to lead to the next point, which is the question around the treatment of the storefronts at the street level. It's important to understand that a building like this is itself is a substrate for the activities that happen in the building and on the building. So the storefronts here are in fact an example of precisely what buildings should be, where the individual businesses or that are going to be in those spaces are what create the activity and the interest, where they're not having to compete with the building in order to identify themselves. So the detailing, the color, the pattern, the materials, the rhythm, the scale of those storefronts is exactly appropriate. I do note that on the, we can, if you zoom in on the elevations and you look at the rendering, there is maybe a slightly overly optimistic lack of detail. We're not seeing cap flashings on the parapets. We're not seeing the realistic kind of gaps on the cladding. We're not seeing the anchoring or stanchions on any of the balcony glass fronts and so on. Well, all of which need to be done carefully. And unfortunately, I do know that this office typically does a pretty good job with that, but it's still noted that that level of detailing is a concern with these buildings that are entirely fiber cement cladding. That's my comments. Now, the panel typically has a discussion about what our proposed resolution is going to be. Does anyone wants to start that conversation? No one with strong feelings about it?
I would put forward a B to work with the comments.
Anyone else?
It'd be sufficient to work out the garbage room and access issues at the back.
Yeah, my feeling is that those are my impression is that those are relatively easily resolved. The garbage room is a straightforward, could be done in 5 minutes. The issue with having an excess of using the clear space for the accessible spaces as a circulation space and as a go-by for the garbage is more problematic. There's not a lot of room on that lane with the amount of parking that they are proposing. But I'm not sure that there is a solution to that unless we're able to delete one parking space off of that lane somehow. I mean, it's interesting how when you look at that diagram, right, they've placed, the PMT and all of the parking that they can on the lane, and they've put all the parking they possibly can on that level 2, and somehow that works out to being the required amount of parking. It seems like too much of a coincidence, and I would wonder, from up on the planning side, whether this is not a better project if we simply say, okay, one less parking spot is fine, right?
Yes.
So clearly it'd be interesting to see that being resolved, but again, it's such a technically clear point, right? If there is a solution, I'm sure that we can expect staff to make that determination. There's no point for for it to come back for the panel to look at it.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't actually check to see, but is there any cash in lieu on this project so far, or is it maxed out?
There are, I believe, 10 cash in lieu parking spaces. And I just wanted to note as well that since this report was written, GFL did provide comments and recommendations for the waste room access. It just has not been passed along to the applicant yet.
Great. So given that discussion, I am in agreement with Luke's proposed B resolution to resolve the panel's comments by staff.
That's
Luke,
also okay, but I'm sorry, I just want to interrupt there real quick. I think that's okay, but given that I just found out that there's 10 parking in lieu already on this project, I do not think it's acceptable to lose a parking stall.
It's
clear to me that the mass has been maxed out on this site, which is typical, but at some point it'll have to be worked out,
So on that point, I guess, is we're saying we're already 10 parking spaces short. So my feeling is what's paying for in lieu for one more, right? It's either that or we or you know or we or the project simply doesn't work, because I don't know how you resolve it. But again, I feel that can be left to staff rather than to this design panel.
If the spaces on the sort of northwest side were pushed closer to the PMT to increase that width of the access aisle, that might assist a little bit in having less dings in vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I also just wanted to add one comment that of the storefronts that are going to be along the northwest or northeast side in front of those bicycle racks, that there should, always be at least 1.8 meters of space that remains free. So that's probably something that needs to be managed by the district for signage, etc., that might go out, outside of that. But okay, I can support B.
Great. Luke, are you still in the feeling that your proposed B is recommendable? Do you want to formally suggest that?
Oh, I can formally suggest B. Yeah, it's okay. I just think that the comment that they should be working with is that it's not acceptable to bring garbage through a single accessible path, intended for parking use. That's really the comment, I think. Ultimately, it's down to the proponent to, come up with that solution.
Agreed. I find it surprising that is in fact not simply code, but clearly it seems problematic. Do we have someone seconding Luke's motion? Great, Sarah seconds. Are we willing to vote on this?
In favor.
Show of hands and an aye. Great, we are unanimous.
Thank you very much. Great commentary, and we look forward to developing this further and resolving these issues. Thank you.
Yep,
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Productive. I believe we have no further business. Did staff have items they wanted for roundtable discussion by the panel?
Can I add one real quick?
Yes.
I would actually just like to put something in the minutes to be able to maybe it's a discussion for the head of planning, but it would be good to talk about the continuity of these streetscapes, especially given like today's Second Ave. There's a lot of projects that are coming online, and they're all very different, but there's nothing actually that speaks into the DPA 3. Well, there's kind of some stuff in the DPA 3 about it, but it might be good to have like an ADP chat at some point.
Yeah, additionally, like just understanding where all the bike lanes are going to go. Are they one way? What's the condition? Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. It would be nice to have a holistic view of a streetscape. Whether or not there are, there's varied forms, that's fine, but I think there needs to be some kind of lining up of forms. I have significant concern around Second and Victoria. But that's just that's all I wanted to say.
Good. Thank you, Luke. I think that's a worthwhile point, that where it's applicable, as it is here, where you have multiple developments all occurring in a reasonably short time frame, and so there is the opportunity to have a better understanding of context. It would be nice to have that. Is that minuted?
Yep, thank you.
Great. So I believe we are done with our agenda. Can we vote on adjourning?
I'll make that motion.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy
Okay.
the rest of your afternoon.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, have a good holiday,
Merry
everyone.
Christmas and happy holidays to all of you. See you in the new year.
Bye.
Happy holidays.